Well, I've come to the conclusion that some people have more power because they deserve more power. They deserve more power. They're actually better people. Now, of course, once we come to that argument, we have to decide, how are they better? What makes them better? And whatever makes them better, by the way, cannot be simply the biological stuff he was talking about, right? Because that doesn't make them better. We all share that. So there's got to be something else. And he comes up with what I call the boxes. We pass out boxes. That's right. Each newborn child is given a stack of boxes. And these are wonderful tools, because with these boxes, you can live your entire life without actually meeting another human being. Those are special boxes, don't you think? You don't actually have to get to know anyone, because the boxes will explain everything in the universe that you need to know about the world. That's wonderful, right? Don't have to think, we'll think for you. For example, when you're born, you get the gender box for free. Don't have to pay for it. Now, what's supposed to happen is that when you see someone that's a different gender than you, I mean, you know, if you had to go meet them, I mean, that's a scary kind of thing, isn't it? I mean, it's kind of scary to go up and meet people that are different than you in some way. So I won't do that. I have the box. That's right, the magical box. So open up the gender box, and it says, whatever you do, don't wear or come in contact with pink. That's what the box says. My mother bought me a pink dress shirt. It's a beautiful pink dress shirt. I spent more than a year developing very complex strategies in conjunction with other male friends of mine to avoid wearing, coming in contact with it, or getting within a 50-mile radius of the pink shirt. I'm not sure what would have happened if I had actually touched or worn the pink shirt, but it must have been something very, very severe. I could only wear blue. I cannot wear pink. I cannot be associated with anything that's pink. Now, it wasn't that I made a decision not to like pink. It didn't even get that far. Right? The box told me that being male, being a boy, you don't wear pink. You simply don't. You don't get associated with that. That's an example of a piece of information that's in the box. And remember now, I don't have to think about whether I like pink or not. It doesn't have to get that complicated, because the box has already told me what to do. The box also told me that people who are female cannot drive. And you may wonder, how would we get something about driving? See, I don't have to actually find out if some individual female can drive. She cannot drive. Why can she not drive? Because driving requires rationality. And in Plato's world, in Plato's box, rationality is associated with being male. So women, having obviously not being male, therefore don't have the rationality. Therefore the complex stuff like math, science, and of course driving is probably not something that they can do. So that means if you see one of them driving, run for your life, because anything could happen to you. And in the same context, don't steer people like that towards math and science, because they won't be able to handle it because they don't have the rationality. This is why, for example, if you have a female candidate for president of the United States, you get interesting questions like, do you think you can handle it? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know what you think about the state of American politics, primarily male-dominated, but I think that question of can people handle it could probably be more evenly distributed around the table. Now, just in case gender isn't your thing, you also get a race box. Lots of fun in the race box. Okay? And the race box says, if you see someone who's in this different social category of race, it tells you great things. I mean, you don't have to meet them. It tells you what kind of music they like. Tells you what neighborhood they live in. Tells you what sport they like. I mean, it's just impressive. Great example, I was an undergraduate at Georgetown University. That's my alma mater. I get on the elevator. It happens to be Parents' Weekend. All universities and colleges have Parents' Weekend, and parents come. I am on campus. I get on the on-campus elevator, and two parents who happen to be out of my race box get into the elevator with me, and they turn to me and they want to have a pleasant conversation. And I love conversation. I love interacting with human beings. And so they turn around to me and they say, "What position do you play on the basketball team?" Keep in mind, they don't know in mind. There were no questions about my background, what I did, what my major was, the fact that I was at a college and university and that we were at a university. It never, the box told them who I was and what I did. I mean, pretty elaborate information. I not only play sports, but I of course play basketball. And so the only question you need to ask is, what position on the team do I play? Now, of course, I thought for a moment I could fix this situation, and I said, well, actually, I'm not an athlete. I'm in the School of Foreign Service. I'm studying to be an ambassador. My major is in international politics. I'm thinking, good, right? We got it all straightened out now. And they went back to the box. They said, that's nice. No, seriously, what position do you play on the team? The race box. I hope you get the concept of the box. And you have to begin to interrogate, how many times do you go into the box?
Yeah.
Every time you go into the box, it is an excuse not to meet another human being. Just think about that for a second. Every time you go to the box, and usually there are hints that we're about to go to the box when we say, well, you know how fill in the blank is. Mm-hmm. Right? You know how they are, you know what they do. Or you get these general statement, men are from Mars, women are from Venus, or something like that. Right? Anything like that is a signal that I'm about to go to the box, because it means I'm not going to see you. And here's the worst part about the boxes. The boxes actually enforce on the person that you're directing it towards the obligation to defend themselves. You catch that? It's inherently a defensive thing. Because it's not that your box changes for me. It's that you expect me to explain why I'm not like the box. Mm-hmm. You get it? Yeah. So that means when I go into the expensive store, even though I have 6 college degrees, own my own business, and could probably buy the store and anything I want in there, they don't know that. So when I walk in, they go into the box. Mm-hmm. They say, obviously, he's going to steal something. He's going to steal something. So we got to follow him around because he's going to steal something. I haven't said a word, haven't done anything, never been in the store before, but they're going to follow me. So they start following me around. Now see, I see all of this as teachable moments. And that's been a long journey. One of the things you have to do if you're going to be a leader, and I don't mean just leader, I don't mean leader in terms of I'm the president, the treasurer, not just that kind of leadership, but if you're going to be a leader as a human being, a person who in some way is an example, a living example for other people, you have to decide how you're going to respond to that situation, because people are going to be watching. Mm-hmm. Everyone in this room is a leader. And so the issue is when people are following you around, how do you react? Now, of course, there's a lot of human options. One of them is to be like, you know what you really need to do, and share some words with them. Mm-hmm. Very colorful. We can get very colorful with words that we can use to human beings who are beginning to annoy us. Mm-hmm. Anger is a legitimate reaction. You get pissed off. Mm-hmm. The problem with those is that nobody's learning anything. That's what I had to learn. That my anger, my frustration, my resentment, all of that stuff was not teaching somebody something, because obviously somebody didn't know something. So I turned it into a teachable moment. I was in a store, and I was being followed around, and you when it happens to you a lot, you begin to recognize what's going on. Right. Okay, I'm being followed around. It's not an accident that the manager is doing inventory on every road that I happen to be moving. Okay, it's the roving inventory. I get it. Okay, so he follows me all around the store. And at some point, the manager who was following me gets a call to go, and it's a drugstore, and they have, usually most drugstores have this little booth up front. He got a phone call. So he switches off to this other person who's supposed to follow me. But instead of going down the aisle, I followed the manager all the way back to the booth. Mm-hmm. And he turns around and he says, "Why are you following me?" I said, "It looked like so much fun when you were doing it." I hope you get my point. The religious box. A lot of people been going to the box lately with that. Because people that don't know anything about Christianity or Islam from a theological position, I'm also a theologian and an ordained minister, people have no clue about the theology systems. They all know how Muslims are right now.
Mm-hmm.
They just know. But, you know, Muslims believe, oh, they do. Not according to anything I know, but see, they don't need to know a real Muslim. We got the one in the box.
Mm-hmm.
And the real Muslim is an Arab. Not all Muslims are Arab.
Mm-mm.
The real Muslim lives in the Middle East. The majority of Muslims don't live in the Middle East. The real Muslim speaks Arabic. I mean, and we, you know, and I can go down the list. We've all seen it. It was so bad after 9/11. Some people went in the box, and the box said Muslims dress funny. They have little turbans. So somebody went out to kill people with turbans because Muslims wear turbans and they were gonna get revenge, and they went and killed a bunch of Sikhs.
Yeah.
They didn't know the difference between Sikhs and Muslims.
Yeah.
But see, what told them to go do that was the box. Because most of those people never actually met a real Muslim, and if they did, the box would get in the way.
Mm-hmm.
Sexuality, that box is going ballistic, right? Everyone knows. And that's even more interesting because that box apparently involves stuff that's not in public view.
Mm-hmm.
That's even worse. Because it's not just about something that we see socially. In that case, it's something we don't see.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because as far as I can tell, now maybe society's changed. I recognize I've been around for a little while, so society does change. But as far as I can tell, the sexual activities of individuals tends to be something that's not on public display.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Unless it's in the pornography industry or something strange like that. Generally speaking, that's something but it's amazing the number of people who have figured that out. But see, my sense is, and the amazing thing is, one of the hints that you know it's a box is that it's the same for everybody.
Yeah.
Because see, my experience with you is my experience with you. Your experience with me is very personal. And someone else's experience with you, even if they're your friend, is not the same. You have different relationship. But when you're coming out of the box, it's always the same, because it's just a stereotype that we all believe. And so we all know what, you know, I had a friend of mine giving me just a brilliant dissertation on the homosexual family. Now I'm a sociologist, so it was very difficult to sit through this discussion.
Mm-hmm.
But I realized that was another teachable opportunity. I'm like, I'm gonna let you go ahead and finish that, and then I'm gonna share some things with you. But I had to sit through his explanation. I said, well, just before I respond to some of that, how many homosexual parents do you know? The answer, 0.
Right.
How much research have you done on this subject? Given that the person didn't graduate from high school, 0. So where are they getting this from? The box. And the box tells them how gay people are, how straight people are, how white people are, how black people are, how rich people. We've had, if you've been watching the 99% and you've been watching the Tea Party, in many ways they got the class box out, and we all know how rich people are, and we all know how poor people are, right? Poor people don't work, right? They just sit around and they collect. You know, and even at the presidential level, you can see that some of the highest people in society, they still, just because you're at an elite level in society doesn't mean you don't have boxes. The boxes go with you. Education, it turns out, doesn't change the boxes.
That's right.
That goes back to what I mean by the Band-Aid. That's why it's important that you understand the structure. Simply having a workshop in and of itself is not going to address the SIP, the structural integrity problem. Beyond the fact that the boxes hurt people, I want to emphasize free boxing for everyone. Notice the weight. See, it turns out these boxes are not light.
Mm-hmm.
Spiritually, they're not light in terms of our empathy and our sympathy. They are very, very heavy. We have to carry them around, right? Because I never know who I'm going to meet. So I got to make sure I got my race box. I can't leave home without it, right? This is like American Express. Can't leave home without it. Only it's not an express because you're not moving fast. You kind of, it's American slowdown. Okay. Then you get to the airport. You can't get on the flight because you never get past the TSA. Too many boxes. Right? Wait a minute. Hold up. I can't leave my race box. I'm going to run into somebody. I got to take my gender bomb, my sexuality. And imagine every time you have a thought, Every time you encounter another human being, you gotta, excuse me, I'll be right back. I gotta go to the box. Imagine having to go to a file cabinet, right, that you have located somewhere with all of that weight every single time you try to interact with a human being. You simply can't approach a human being as in fact a human being. You gotta go back to the box. And you're taught that those boxes make you safe, right? That's kind of why we keep them around. They make us safe, but what they really do is they weigh us down. You can see right here that he's carrying the boxes, she's kind of, but it really takes more than one person. We carry this weight together. We carry this weight together. So there's no, I'm trying to get us out of Plato's world. Plato has a tendency to create a dichotomous world, right? Another aspect of the boxes is there's my box, and my box is opposed to your box. We're doing box warfare. And the truth is that what you have here is you have this dichotomous thing where, you know, this woman and this man, they're kind of both locked up in this process of dealing with these boxes. Now, how much human energy do we lose playing with boxes? How much time do we waste playing with boxes that we don't have to play with? Because none of us ordered these boxes. No one filled out an order form. They were just given to you. And you've simply been told that you have to still keep carrying them around and passing them to other people. Sometimes people will bring you boxes. Watch out for that. One of the other things that makes you a leader is you refuse to take other people's boxes. I may not be able to take yours away, but at very minimum, you cannot. I am a non-box. I refuse to be the U.S. Postal Service. I'm not carrying it anywhere. I'm not sending it anywhere. Sometimes we become carriers. It's not my box, but I take your box to someone else. I take your stereotypes, I take your closed-mindedness, I take your lack of information, and I share it with other people, which means that now somebody else has to carry the box. So one of the other things is to avoid, when you're confronted with a situation, I think over there, at least I came in on the tail end, but there was this moment where you say, stop the oppression. The equivalent to the stop the oppression moment is, I'm not gonna carry that box. Now, here's what's gonna happen. When you say you're not gonna carry the box sometimes, you're not necessarily gonna be the most popular person in the room, right? When I tell the gender joke with a group of men, I'm the most popular person in the room. When you say that joke is inappropriate, your cool points tend to be deducted. Right? And that's why sometimes we don't like doing that, right? But remember, we're all leaders. So that means we're gonna do it. It means that when someone tells the joke, makes the denigrating comment, we're going to say, no, I will not be a part of that, right? That's the challenge of us being leaders, right? Now, this says, let's take a peek inside the box. You see him kind of looking over there. Here's what's inside the box. Plato's discrimination kit, free to everyone, right? First of all, Plato's kit says that there are subjects and objects. There are only two things in the world, subjects and objects. Sound pretty simple. Now, anything that's not you is an object to you. Catch that. Now, subjects and objects sounds pretty good. Let's see, I got a table here. This is a table. The table's an object, right? Would everyone agree that the table's an object? And I control the table. The table doesn't get to go anywhere unless I want to move the table. In fact, the table doesn't even matter unless I need a table. I define the table. The table is supposed to do what I'm supposed to do, right? Let's say you had a toaster. How many of you right now are very concerned that your toaster may be lonely? Right? You're not with it. Yeah, you may not have seen it all day. If you didn't have toast this morning, it could have been weeks. How dare you not be attentive to the emotional needs of your toaster? Probably sitting at home right now with an attitude. TWA, toaster with attitude. Well, can't believe the nerve. Had bacon, got some grits this morning, but no toast at all. Just completely ignore me. And then when you do get toast, You got the nerve of it to be golden brown. How come we can't get something light? No, it gotta be golden brown every time. Now, when you start hearing these complaints from your toaster, what's likely to be your response? Step into the theoretical world for here. What do you do with a toaster with an attitude?
Buy another.
Buy
You
a
get
new
another
one.
one. I don't have to listen to this. I'm going to Walmart. You about to get bounced. Cause I don't need a toaster with an attitude. Cause you supposed to do what I tell you to do. Okay. Might be okay with a toaster. It's kind of funny, right? Talking about a toaster. But remember R. Kelly said about his relationship partner, you remind me of my Jeep. Something's wrong when your relationship partner reminds you of a Jeep. I mean, we could have flipped it over and made it a toaster.
Yeah.
You remind me of my toaster. You get golden brown when I tell you to. Do you see what I'm saying? See, and the way you're going to relate to a person if you turn them into a toaster is going to be different than if they're a human being.
That's right.
You with me? Right? Because now you got to be sensitive to their emotional needs. Now you got to have a relationship. There's a right of mutual interaction. There's a mutual independence, but not with a toaster. What happens when people become disposable? When people become means to an end? When people are seen as objects? I happen to know. I teach in Black Studies. There was something called slavery. You may have heard that somewhere. And in slavery, an amazing thing happened. Human beings became objects. Like extreme forms of objects. They were so much objects that people said, you can hit them, burn them, beat them, cut off limbs, and that's okay because they don't hurt because they're not human. I mean, you can't hurt your toaster, can you? And selling human beings, these human, well, they weren't human beings, I forgot, I'm sorry. They were objects. And so you could sell these objects. You could sell, now gosh, those objects look like children, but you could sell them. You could sexually exploit them, rape them. It's okay. Because they're objects, they don't have feelings. And of course, they don't think either. Right? So they can't create anything. They don't have cultures or civilization or history. I mean, why on earth should I be teaching Black Studies? Because they're things. In fact, to make sure that they're things, we're going to give them a language that says they're things. The newspaper would say, I saw a black. Not a black car, a black tree, or black. I saw a black.
Yeah.
The reference was to a human being, but the philosophical tradition was Plato. It was an object. And so when you see a black, that's a very different thing than seeing an African human being. Right? Do we see women or do we see a woman? Makes a tremendous difference. Do we see individuals in poverty or do we see poor folk? And how does that change? Objects are controlled by subjects, right? That's simply the way it should be. Objects, right, should be controlled by subjects. In fact, bad things happen if objects aren't controlled by subjects. The idea is they should be controlled. So my friend who graduated with a JD PhD from Harvard, she becomes a partner in a law firm, a junior partner in a law firm. She goes to her first law firm meeting, and she meets the senior partner. Elderly man comes in, and he says, "Dear, I'll have mine black with 2 lumps of sugar."
Oh my God.
The box, right?
Right.
Because, and the box doesn't say she could be a junior partner. That's not part of it. The box says, if she's there, being female, and I wanted to show you that actually the race box and the gender box, sometimes you open both of them at the same time. And you mix the results. And so by mixing the results, she's there to serve him coffee. And when she said she was a junior partner, she said he looked like someone had hit him physically. Like, how could this have happened? My world has turned upside down. My toaster is talking. Right? Objects are oppose the subject. That's another thing, right? You have to be, I remember this discussion in Oakland, California. They have a lot of African American students in Oakland, California that are not doing well in literature. Teachers got together and said, what we should do is we should use their vernacular, their dialect, as a bridge to standard English. They do better. If we start with where they are in terms of language and we take them to where we want them to go, we'll do better. But that's not what the curriculum was doing. So they went to the school board and said, we want to do this. Right? Just like we would do with, say, someone who spoke Spanish, we'll use the Spanish as a bridge to English, right? Made perfect sense. So we want to do that with African American students. Well, it didn't work out. Because as soon as they got to the school board, they said, you're trying to teach black English. Revelation time. English, and I've checked, it doesn't have a color.
Yeah.
There's no purple English. There's no pink English. Only in the Platonic American mind is there something called black English. Now, I'm a scholar, right? And so I do know that there are about 1,283 African American dialects that I can talk to. I can talk about dialects and vernaculars. I can do that. I don't know what black English is. But the important thing is not that you do know. In fact, I don't think they did either. I don't think anybody knew what black English was. But the important thing is that you know if there's a black English, there must be a what?
White English.
There you go, automatically. Do you get it? The one box creates the opposite box. Now, once we know that there's white English and black English, we still don't know what either one of those means. But it doesn't matter because you know the next step. Which English is better?
White English.
White, of course. Okay, now who speaks white English?
White people.
Yes, right, these imaginary white people. You get it? But the important thing for this discussion is that you don't want to teach black English because whatever it is, it's bad. And so therefore you want to teach white English, whatever that is. And so this program that was going to help African American students do better in literature went down the drain. That's what happens. Missed opportunity. That's going to have a tremendous impact on the future of not only African American students, but Oakland and California and whatever, all because somebody went to the box instead of to the book. I always say substitute, put the book instead of the box. Objects are antagonistic to subjects. You can't join them together. There's a fear element to this. If my box is wrong, it means I have to meet people. It means I may have spent my entire life thinking the wrong thing about people. That gives me more responsibility. I don't like that feeling. So I won't do that. Antagonism. I'm at the American Sociological Association conference. Remember, I'm a sociologist. And we're at the Fontainebleau Hotel in Miami Beach. If you've ever been to Miami Beach, you know demographically and economically, it's a little different than Miami. There's a difference between Miami Beach. People are like, Miami Beach. Saying, no. Nothing alike. Miami Beach is an upscale economic community, and they're not used to seeing a lot of people that manifest themselves in human form like me. I hope you got that. So, I'm at the Fontainebleau Hilton, which is one of the more elite hotels, and my colleague, who's wearing a suit and tie, is inside getting our room key, because we're sharing rooms for the conference. I'm dressed pretty much like I am now, with the exception that I have a Malcolm X cap. At the time the film was out, I had the big X. Okay. You'll notice that if you go to the Fontainebleau Hilton, everyone wears Hilton. Like, Hilton shirts, Hilton, they're Hilton head to toe, right? Even though Paris, I looked for Paris, she wasn't there. But my point is, that's the way everyone is dressed. And so I'm standing at the front of the hotel waiting on my colleague to come out and say, we have our room. So all of a sudden, a young woman in a real expensive car. It had to be a European model, maybe a DeLorean or something. It was something really expensive at the time. It's probably like a $150,000 car. She races up to the door and sits. I don't pay it any attention. Elite hotel, elite vehicle, okay. After a few minutes, I begin to hear a car horn blowing. And it's pretty incessant. And I'm thinking, man, whoever is inside she's waiting on, they better come out, because she's starting to get an attitude. I can feel it coming. She was starting to get irate. I'm like, I don't know, whatever. So finally, she is so upset, she jumps out of the car and slams the door. And I'm thinking, I wish I knew the guy, because I'd be like, run for your life. Don't come back. I don't know what, you know, I mean, she is just incredibly irate. So she starts storming up the driveway and directly to me. That's when it's like in NASA, Houston, we have a problem. And she says, with her keys in hand, jingle, 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 well. Now, of course, the old Imani at that point would have been, you know, probably carted off to jail. It just would have been tragic. But the new Imani that understands that this is okay, this is another one of those unscheduled teachable moments. I said, well. I mean, she said, well. Some kind of mystical greeting. Well. Wait, well. And she said, well, aren't you going to park my car? Okay. I said, ma'am, what was it about me that suggested that I was the one to park your car? You'll notice that all of the valets who do so have Hilton. There's nothing on me that says Hilton. So could you perhaps share with me, for my educational purposes, what it was that suggested that I was supposed to park your car? See, I know what happened. She didn't see Dr. Imani, the sociologist. She went inside the box. And the box said, the dark-skinned guy outside the hotel is there to park my car. And he hasn't done that, and so that's why she was. And imagine the anger. Imagine the stress. And by the way, anger and stress, you know, they actually damage the body. Imagine how much internal damage she could potentially be doing. The woman could have dropped dead from a heart attack because she was that angry about nothing. Absolutely nothing. I thought the fun was over, right? I thought I'd had enough fun for the day, so I went inside the hotel. The fun never stopped. Got on the elevator, going up to the top floor. The elevator opens, and there's a gentleman, someone who appears to be his wife, and I assume that's their daughter. I'm in the elevator by myself. Little girl gets in the elevator. Father and mother are frozen. I mean, we could have done a mannequin test to see if they actually were breathing. I didn't see breathing, no signs of vital life at all. I'm talking statues. Except for when the father says, honey, we can take the next.
Oh my God.
Door closes. Now, I know I should have gone up to my hotel room, but this was too rich. I'm a sociologist. So I went back down. Ding. Opens again. You're still there. Now, the little girl, figuring that it's just a factual problem, gets in the elevator again. But this time she does a little demonstration. Mom, Dad, there's plenty of room. Mom and Dad are still in mannequin mode. Honey, you know, we can take the stairs.
Oh my God.
I probably should have left it alone at this point. But this was too good. Ding, downstairs. Met them at the stairwell. They stepped out of the stairwell in mortal fear of their lives, I know. I reached into my pocket, I said, hi, I'm Reverend Dr. Nikitah Imani. Very, very pleased to meet you. Have a wonderful day. That's the fear. What are they afraid of?
But the little girl is so innocent, you know. The parents are trying
Absolutely.
to make her think like that.
Absolutely. And what's important there's a good note and a bad note. The bad note is that I'm dealing with this, right? And now notice, it's not bothering me. I've overcome it. It doesn't bother me anymore. Because I know it's not a personal judgment. It's not personal at all. It's they got these boxes and they can't get loose. But the optimistic, the hopeful moment is the little girl hasn't learned it yet.
Mm-hmm.
She's probably been given a box, but she hasn't really lived, she doesn't live in it yet. She has all the potential that they've lost. Okay. One of your challenges as a leader in this area is that you got to, first of all, you have to show people their boxes. Because usually the boxes are hidden in a closet. Isn't that where you put your boxes? You put them in the closet and you hide them away. And you just pull them out when you need to get something out of there. So the first thing you have to kind of do is you have to open up this closet in terms of discussion and in terms of activities. What you want to do is get people to open up the closet. Let's make sure we know. And sometimes it's making people talk about their assumptions, right? I used to put on in class, I used to put on, I would put labels, white, black, male, female, whatever the particular labels were, and you can go on for days with that. And I'd say, okay, what do we all know about those people? And the amazing thing was it only took 5 or 10 minutes for us to get that thing filled. Because we all knew what went. And the amazing thing was that there was general agreement, right, as to what group A, B, C, that's the box stuff. But we don't usually see it. We simply use it. Making it visible is an important part of what we have to do as leaders. You have to make, show people that they got these boxes and that, and that they're using them. We're all using them, by the way. There's no one innocent. I can't plead innocent. I grew up with my own little box. I had my race box, I had my gender box, I had my sexuality box, I had my, and I tried. But see, for me, the problem was I'm not good with multitasking beyond a certain point. And when it got to the point where I had 15 boxes, I was like, forget all this. I'm just gonna meet people. I mean, it was more just, I just simply couldn't carry around the weight of trying to figure everybody out. And I said, well, darn it, I'm stuck out here. I forgot a couple of boxes. I guess I'll just have to put my hand out and figure out who you are. And I did that, and I didn't die. And once I figured that out, I was like, oh, that works. Let me try that again. And it turned out it was so much easier psychologically. Suddenly the weight was lifted. I was like, oh, I can do this, right? But I also realized as I began to do it that I was kind of strange, because most people still weren't doing it, which means I still had work to do. The object is fear because it's not you and it's not like you, right? It doesn't have anything in common with you. That's why and we're afraid of the unknown. So the object is, you have to ask the object questions. You have to interrogate the object. That's one of the worst experiences of being oppressed in any situation. The woman in the male situation, the homosexual in the heterosexual situation, the Muslim in the Christian situation, the vegetarian in the meat-eating situation, has to explain their humanity. Now, we may not say the word, please explain your humanity, but like, for example, multiracial people. I asked a group of them, I said, what annoys you the most about the box? And they said, what I hate is when people will walk up to me and say, what are you?
Yeah.
Do you see that shift? Mm-hmm. The hint, what's the hint for the box in that question? What are you? Not who are you? Not what do you like to do? Where do you come from? What's your background? No. What are you? What they're signaling is, I looked at you, I went to the box. Right. Didn't come up with a card for you. So could you please explain why you're not in my box? I need you to get in my box because I can't understand you without, I have to have, you're gonna have to identify. Which one of my boxes would you like to pick? Mm-hmm. Which one can I put you in? And of course their answer really is none of the above. But that's not an option. You have to explain. You have to explain your presence. What are you doing here? If you're a lower income person, you walk into an elite neighborhood, you'd be surprised. Studies after studies show that there's more calls to the police station than at any other time. Why? Because there's a person. Now, those calls don't come just because there's people walking through the neighborhood, but because there's people walking through the neighborhood who we know do not belong here. Because the box told us they don't belong. The box says this person doesn't belong here. So we got to call the cops. It's a situation of danger. Zimmerman? Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. You with me? Mm-hmm. See, I have no doubt in my mind. But he felt his community was in danger. Yeah. He had to defend it. And my argument is, I think that entire episode was in the box. I don't think we ever saw a human being. I think there was an entire box interaction all the way through. And so I use that example because it can result in real death. The boxes don't just hurt people's feelings. They lead to people not having jobs. They lead to people being hungry. They lead to people being homeless. They lead to people being dead. Right? Because the police officer who comes, if he sees me, Nikitah Imani, respectable citizen of the United States of America, that's one kind of interaction. On the other hand, if he sees a box, black, male, violent, threatening, right? I know 4 people that got killed because they tried to pull out their driver's license. That's all. Just try to pull out their. So I want to impress. And of course, I don't have to talk about if you happen to be gay. And you know the violence that has, tragic violence. Sometimes simply being young in the wrong place. So I want you to think about this broadly. Now, this is that structural thing, because this is not particular to any person or any particular organization. This is the box that we all play in. It's like Monopoly. But someone has already dealt out all the property cards. And if you understand what happens, if you ever played Monopoly and you passed all the cards to one person, you know it's going to be a very difficult game. Right? Okay, here's the secret of breaking the system. Right? The secret of breaking the system is that we are actually in the box. I'm thinking you're in the box. But the truth is that when I open up the box, it's me. Because in order to objectify another human being, I have to objectify myself. Dr. King said this, by the way. Right? If I'm going to keep you in jail, I've committed myself to something. What have I committed myself to if I decide to put you in jail? I think I'm imprisoning you, but in what way have I imprisoned myself? Anyone? Everyone's so quiet.
You're using your energy to keep a person in jail.
Yeah, and I've got to supervise you. I have to keep you in jail. You're not naturally going to stay in jail. Now, I've committed myself to the task. So if I put you in a box, I've also committed myself to being in the box with you. I've committed myself to becoming an object. I've committed myself to being less than who I am as a human being. And so the only way I can get myself out is to turn it upside down and get out. And of course, when I turn it upside down, it means I have to let you out. We either all get out together or we don't get out. Okay, so I want to talk about the matrix. Let's change the way we think about our social identity. We tend to, Plato's world works on the basis that I have one identity. And that's all of me, right? I'm black, that's it. That's all, that exhausts it. Or I'm female, that's it, that's all. Or I'm poor, or there's always this one identity that trumps everything else, so the totality of my humanity disappears because I'm only this one thing. And once you figure out this one thing, you know me. Yeah. The truth is, we're not points. We're on a matrix, which means my skin color and my experience is connected to that, is a part of my being, but that's not all of me. My experience in being male is also part of me. My experience in being Christian is also part of me. My experience in having been a Boy Scout, being very depressed about recent news, has, all of that's me. You got to put all that. So if you could imagine yourself putting that all together, if each one of those things is a point, like think of mathematics, you have the X and the Y. If my race, so to speak, is X, and my gender is Y, and my class is Z, and we can go on, but I'd end up not with a point, but with a matrix, right? Right. I'd end up with a cluster of points, and the cluster would be me. And that's who I am socially. And all of us are in this matrix. We're all part of this. We are sometimes the more powerful person. Sometimes being a male is an advantage to me. Sometimes it's a disadvantage. Sometimes being darker skinned is an advantage sometimes. And so the truth is that there's no set criteria that makes me powerful all the time. I am sometimes the oppressor and the oppressed, sometimes both at the same time. And we're all in this together. That's important to understand, right? So there's no good guy and bad guy. Because sometimes the reason it's hard for people to discuss this is that if I bring up slavery, everybody thinks that there are good guys and bad guys. If you really interrogate slavery and you really study it, you realize that everybody was involved on all sides. There's no race exclusion, there's no regional exclusion, that north-south exclusion, the truth is everybody was at some stage of this process of oppression. Oppression is global. It involves, it implicates all of us. Even if it implicates you for simply not doing anything. It turns out that not taking a stand is taking a stand.
That's right.
Martin Luther King said, when the contest against oppression is over, what we will remember is not the evil actions of those who sought to oppress, but the inaction of those who didn't. Right? So there's no neutrality, and that's important. You have to step out and you have to say that I'm going to deal with this matrix. How do we deal with it? I call it scaffolding. Now, imagine the matrix as a three-dimensional structure. It'd probably be a giant skyscraper, right? And all of us are on the building at some point. Imagine if we're all clinging to the building on the outside, right? So we're at different positions, and we're also moving, right? I mean, there's social mobility, right? You may start at one class level and then you'll climb up. But even if you climb up as class level, then you got a race level. You may not go as far as somebody else. And so we all end up at different positions. If we were going to fix the building, we'd have to build a scaffold, right? We can't just climb up the side of the building. We'll fall, okay? So we're going to have to build a support system. And essentially the support system is connections between different points on the building. And that's literally what a scaffold is. They decide that they want to do construction on, say, the 94th floor. But they can't climb up floor by floor to the 94th floor, and even if they did, they'd be stuck there because there's no way to get up and down and supply materials. So they actually build a whole structure, and it goes all the way from the 94th floor down to the bottom, and it goes all the way across the building, and they use that to climb. Okay? This is what we have to do to help people who are stuck in the boxes. They're actually stuck on their floor. They need us to help. And so there's no direct ladder. We have to build scaffolding. How do we build scaffolding? It's really networking. As a leader, the first thing I have to recognize is that, what does it mean to be a leader? It's to help you get up the building. Help you get up the building. That's what makes me a leader, right? I bring other people up the building. So in addition to providing some security for myself, I help other people. So that means I'm in charge of helping build the scaffolding. Congratulations, you've been appointed. You're now all scaffolders. Okay? And you have to understand, some people down there, especially at the lower levels of the building, they don't know how to climb. There are people scared of heights, right? And so what you're going to have to do, that means first thing you got to do is you have to climb. No one's going to trust this structure. I mean, you know what I mean? If you're like, oh yeah, it's safe, go right ahead. You go first. Okay? You need to be very nervous, and sometimes we do that when it comes to multiculturalism. Yeah, somebody should initiate this process by dealing with these issues of race, class, whatever. Somebody should do that, and y'all go ahead and get it started. I'll be right back. No, I got to start it. You got to see me do it. Because then, that's the only way you're going to know. You got to watch me throw away my box, so that then maybe the one you're clinging to, you're like, well, he let it go. Nothing too bad happened. Maybe I can, maybe they're not ready to let it go completely, but maybe I can just push it a little bit away. And then gradually, but the important thing is you have to start that process. You have to start that process, whether it's by programming, personal contact, providing opportunities. I was mentioning before, a lot of times what we want to do is we tell organizations to go out and be sensitive on these issues. Have you shown them how to be? Where are they supposed to get this information? I mean, if you think about it, if they haven't been doing it, and we live in a society where you don't get this, where do you get this? When did you have the class on what I just presented to you? Right? You really didn't have that class. There's no such class, really. You do get a class on the boxes. It's in every class, in one way or another. But you don't get this one. You don't get the box liberation class anywhere. And so you have to teach that. How do you teach it? By the way you operate. Right? You have to be inclusive. You have to be connective in terms of networking, putting people together. You have to do that. And as they see you do that, then you encourage them to emulate the model. So the first thing I'll tell you is that you want to be a model for what it is that you're talking about. Scaffolding means connecting people. One of the other aspects of Plato's boxes is that we hide behind the boxes. That's another function of boxing. Because I really, not only do I not want to meet you, but I don't really want you to see me. Because if you see me, you're going to recognize that I'm imperfect. Being a human being, I got, there's going to be, it's kind of like someone coming over to your house, and we all have that closet. That, you can go anywhere in my house. Just make yourself at home.
Please
Don't
don't
touch that closet. Right? Because it's skeletons in there. Anything come out. Sometimes our lives as human beings, that's what it is. We all have that closet. Now, what makes us human is that we all have it, right? We all got stuff we're working on. We all works in progress. But the problem is we sometimes act like we're not, and that becomes a problem. What we do is we put our boxes in front of that door. Right? We don't really want you. I really haven't dealt with some of the concerns I have with respect to sexuality. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna slide this box and hope that you don't see it. Right? And so what we have to do is, we have to walk through the house with the box detector. There's a box somewhere in here. Oh, there it is. I got it. And that's kind of what we have to do. We have to let people know it is okay to make a mistake. That's the next point. It is okay to make a mistake. If you haven't done something in a couple of thousand years, the first time you do it, you might mess up. When you learn how to cook, the first time the hot dog might be extra crispy. That wasn't your plan, but that's part of learning how to cook it, right? Sometimes when it gets to diversity, we expect 100% success the first time. No. If I've never done it, I'm scared. I don't necessarily know what to do. I need you maybe to hold my hand, because I'm really scared. You got to understand, everything that I've learned up to this point tells me that even opening the box to look in there and thinking about getting rid of it is going to destroy my whole world. I had a bunch of students, I taught a race class too, talking about the deconstruction of race as a concept, and I had a student get up and say, this class scares me. Not the society, the class scared her. And I said, why does the class scare her? She said, I'm going to lose my identity. Now, she's not literally going to lose her identity, but she is going to lose a certain kind of identity because she had lived her life inside the box. The box told her who she was, and I was messing it up. She's like, well, who am I going to be? You're going to be human. What you'll find is more than you were inside the box. But you got to trust me. And trust is built on interaction. And so you have to stay engaged. I can't simply just give you the cure and walk away. Engagement is going to be important, right? If people are learning how to walk, you got to take their hand and you got to walk a little bit with them, right? And so the same thing is going to happen with organizations and leaders, right? They may want to take that first step, but if you aren't there for that second step, they might just take one step, kind of get nervous, and then turn around and go back. You've got to consistently kind of stay there and encourage them and exhort them, and even in their failures, you got to say, well, I recognize your attempt. I recognize your trying. I recognize what you did. What's unique about this structure as opposed to the matrix that we had before is that the matrix we had before, we didn't build. We were just stuck on it, right? I mean, we didn't pick our race box, our gender box, and what that means. That was all determined before we were ever born. We were stuck into this structure. Well, we're in a society, we want to be connected, so we do want to be in a structure, but we want to build it. We want to consciously choose to build it, and we want to set new rules about how we relate to each other. I still want to be connected, and there's still going to be social hierarchy, right? Somebody's going to be the president, somebody's going to be at a lower level, but we're going to structure the rules in such a way that the connection between us is based on our mutual humanity and not on the biases. Right? So it's also important when you're scaffolding to know where you want to go. One of the biggest things that messes up things related to diversity and multiculturalism is the fact that we don't have a goal. You ever notice that? I mean, there are a lot of cultural diversity, multicultural kind of thing. They say, well, we want to do this. Okay, what's the end? How do we know when we got there? And that becomes the critical problem. People work more diligently if they have some sense of accomplishment, and what makes us have a sense of accomplishment is that we have a goal or objective. What do we want to see? What kind of organizations do we want to see? What kind of leadership do we want to see? What kind of representation from diverse student communities? Well, I'm not determining for you obviously what the goals are, but my point is there need to be goals, and we need to do assessments periodically. Are we getting there? Or are we just kind of, gosh, it would be a really good idea to be more inclusive of women on campus. And then next year we come back, gosh, it would be really important to, and I've been at places where that was every year we said, but is anyone doing it? Is there any assessment? Are we making progress? Do we know how to make progress? I give this picture because this is what I want to do. And you'll notice that in this particular picture, there's one major difference that you maybe can't tell. It's a little distorted because I shrunk it a little bit. But every person really rests on every other person, which is very different than the other matrix. The other matrix says, I can move around without you. I don't need to be connected to you. And we do have this ideology of individualism. Right? The self-made man, the self-made woman, it's all about me, it's all about my organization. The first step to making progress in diversity and difference and any of these things is recognizing that I can't make it without you. I don't know where we got that idea. If you study human beings, and like I said, I'm a sociologist, political science, I've learned that that nothing, the economy, who is the economy? We are. Buying and selling products, we're the economy, right? Ultimately, we're the defense. Ultimately, it's us, ultimately. But sometimes we kind of get into this mentality where it's just me. It's all about me. So if I'm all right, then all of this stuff doesn't matter to me. It's only when you show me the end product that it begins to matter. Sure, you can be a leader. You can get elected to leadership and be totally non-representative and non-inclusive. But that's going to determine what kind of leadership you have. And most importantly, it's going to decide how far you can climb. Right? You may get in the door all by yourself if you want to move. Mm-hmm. And I believe if you're a leader, you want to move. And you want to go somewhere. You want to see those around you go somewhere. The only way up is scaffolding. And the only way you can scaffold is to make connections with other human beings. That's the way we build civilizations. That's the way we build societies. That's the way we survive. And closing and opening for your comments, Martin Luther King said it best when he said, either we will find a way to live together, and implicitly in that, work together, invest together, develop together, do all the things together that we have to do as human beings, or we'll destroy each other. Remember the dam? What happens if I destroy one person in the middle? Because he doesn't matter. It's gone. It's once I know that I know the life of that person in the middle, even if it's not me, means as much as mine. I'm done. Thank you.
I don't want to say the plight of the little man, but they don't understand, they'll say things that don't even make sense, as if they're not even in touch with the bottom. How do you relate to people because obviously they're not hearing anything you said.
Well, they're not. So you just spoke a truth that why take it for granted that the people at the top, if we go back, now in this one it's different, but if I go back to the matrix, why should I be in touch with the bottom? I'm 15 levels up. Why does the bottom even matter? I can't even see them. That's a long way down. Right? So maybe one of the most important things is to introduce them to the bottom. Has anybody seen what is it, CEO?
Yeah.
The CEO, where the chief executive officer of the company has to go work on the front line of the company. And what's fascinating about that program is how many of the CEOs that were in charge of the whole company had no clue what their company did. Remember this one guy that worked he was in charge of a company that ran a whole bunch of He runs the Kentucky Derby and whatever. So he had to go work at the horse stable. This is a man who, you know, is worth billions of dollars. Now, see, on a day-to-day basis, without this show, you know, because he does an interview at the beginning, you know he doesn't have a clue what's going on down. I mean, he doesn't, and he gets down there, he's just stunned. In fact, some of them come back and like, man, I wouldn't even want to do this job.
Right.
I wouldn't want to do the job that I'm making everyone else do to make me money. Well, sometimes we need to do that. Of course, we're not dealing with CEOs, but sometimes, you know, you gotta take the president or the secretary by the hand. Let me show you something. I see something, because obviously you see something that's not right, bless you. Then you gotta take them to it. Don't assume that they're supposed to know. Don't assume also that they're ignoring you. Their ignorance, which we don't like to use that word, but in my context, ignorance is not a bad word. It means not knowing.
Yeah.
Ignorance is not insult or disrespect. A lot of stuff happens in the matrix, not because I don't like you. Like the husband and wife, I could take it personal and say, they're disrespecting me. I really don't see it that way sociologically. I think that's just a tremendous amount of ignorance. And the ignorance leads to fear, and the fear leads to a response to fear that's completely unnecessary. So I turn that into an education moment. I think many of our leaders, maybe more than anybody else, need to be educated. Look at our politicians. In the African tradition, the king, once a year, gets dragged out of his royal hut, which is really elaborate, dragged through the streets, through the mud. He has his royal clothing stripped off, and they put on, you know, the clothing of the lowest people in the society, and they put him in the lowest level of housing that the community has. Why do you think they do that?
Humble him.
Exactly. It's to remind him, this is who you represent. Sometimes I wanted to do that with Congress so bad.
Yeah.
I know it's wrong, but sometimes I've been wondering, okay, see, you don't need health care because I pay for yours.
Mm-hmm.
That's why, actually, that's one of the problems. I can't afford mine because I pay for yours. You're making $300,000 a year. 85% of you are all millionaires.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's why the poverty thing. So I need to take you somewhere. I mean, really, Congress needs a bus trip.
Really.
Let me take you to an indigenous reservation. Let's just chill out. And then we're gonna drive right through the rural South, right through Mississippi, and guess what? I'm gonna drop you off. Just for, I guarantee you, get 1 month. Then we go into inner city Chicago.
Oh yeah.
Right? We just gonna let you hang out there for a couple of hours, and then that way when we talk about the bill on violence, your perspective is, oh, I get it. Yeah, that's serious.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But if I'm in DC, they actually have a car. I used to work in Congress. They actually have a vehicle that will take them from the airport to underground, that takes them from the airport to the Capitol.
Mm-hmm.
So I literally can be in DC, one of the poorest cities in the United States, 70% under the poverty line, and I can see absolutely no human being and get right out of my little subway car on the floor of Congress and say I represent people. So, unfortunately, that model of leadership, that supermodel, is kind of the model we sometimes have at the macro level. And, I'm the president of the club. Well, maybe you don't see the gender problem in this club. It becomes my task to show it to you. That may mean me taking you by the hand. Look, I'm finna introduce you to 2 young ladies who wanted to get involved in our club, but they don't want to get involved now because they had such negative experiences. I want you to hear their experience. And I want you to know that I'm going to be holding you accountable for having heard it. Because as long as you haven't heard it, you can't be held responsible. Now that you've heard it, I'm going to be looking at you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Not to put you down, but to encourage you. I'm challenging you to become an even better leader. I'm not saying you're not a good leader. I'm saying you can be better. That's the way in which we frame it. We don't need to frame it as a deficit. Nobody's to blame for the way it was. But we may very well be to blame for it not becoming what it can be. We need to encourage people. You got all these leadership skills. You got it going on. You are an 8. I'm trying to get you to 9.
Yeah.
Because everything in the universe grows. I mean, I'm sure the plant was beautiful when it first got planted. It was lovely. But its destiny was to go further. Right? I mean, imagine a plant that's like, you know what? I'm about halfway up. I think that's enough. I mean, it's to discourage complacent leadership. Because complacent leadership ultimately is not leadership at all. Right? I mean, because imagine the general. We're marching into battle, and then about halfway there, I'm like, well, I mean, that was good.
Let's go.
So we never actually get anywhere. Right? So I think sometimes we have to challenge and you're in a perfect position to challenge, encourage, cajole, exhort our leaders to move to the next level of leadership. You're here, but we want to take you to the next level. We need to see this as additive, not subtractive. I think that's the problem. Many people see it as I'm losing my boxes. They see it as a minus. Darn, this is something else I've got to consider. No, this is something else that's going to make you better than you were before. Well, I'm a better person without all that baggage. I grew up in a community, sexuality didn't exist. There were no gay people. There weren't any. Right? And so saying whatever you wanted to say about them was okay because they didn't exist. You get it? You see I'm in the box? Right? Women were subordinate to men. And that's just the way it is. God made it that way. I'm back in the box. White people and black people, whatever they are, they're totally different. They can't get along. It's a black thing. You wouldn't understand. Okay? And I lived in that box. That little tiny little box. Okay? And I'm just thankful that I ran into some what I call box detonators, and I'm one. Right? They saw me in the box. They said, "Come on out." Now I resisted. No, I ain't coming out. I just get comfortable in here. This is that comfort zone. And what they did was they took sticks of dynamite, tied them to the box. They said, "You better get out." 5, 4, 3. Of course, I jumped out because I figured out this is gonna be ugly. And they blew up the entire box. Now I can't live in the box anymore. They're like, now for the first time, you're gonna see the world, and you're gonna meet other people and stuff. And in traveling the world and whatever, I can honestly say that I wouldn't be here, wherever I am, without those people. And I refuse to go on without being that person for somebody else.
I have a problem putting like people in an oppressor box where it's
Yeah.
like the thing you were talking about with like there were no like good people and bad people in slavery. Everyone was like a mixture of both.
Absolutely.
But how do you negotiate that where it's like it's so easy for me to be like, oh well, here are the boxes that I recognize that I have, but then like the even secreter boxes, like how do you continually expose yourself?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of it is, this goes back, you remember I said sometimes the substitute for the box is a book. See, like slavery, I'm convinced most people haven't studied slavery. Because if they ever studied it, they would know that dichotomous thing doesn't work. And the same can go for the others. I think sometimes we have to realize that you have to learn more about these things. The taken for granted is not enough. I think sometimes we take leadership for granted. Like, how do you become a leader? Show up at the meeting where there's 5 members, all of them are your friends, say you want to be president, now you're a leader. That is not leadership. That is a position. That's not leadership. If you want to become a leader, you must read about leadership. You must study leadership. You must be mentored by leaders. You know, if you want to be a millionaire, you got to read what other millionaires have done, learn from their tech. I mean, if you go back, Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, all these people that are esteemed in the economic world, they all wrote books and whatever. And what are their books about? Like what they had to go through. And the first thing they said, we learned how to fail. Yeah. Number 2, we learned to listen to criticism. Number 3, we learned that anyone from the lowest level of our company to the highest level could give us advice that would be constructive, and we started listening. You do know that Bill Gates doesn't program computers.
Right.
Just to let you know. Steve Jobs doesn't build computers. Steve Wozniak was the one who built Apple Computer from the beginning. Okay, I make that point because these are people who made fortunes mobilizing resources and abilities of other people. That's what made them leaders. See? So I think it's changing the way we think about leadership is one. And the other, to recognize that just like you're going to study how to be a leader, you got to study how to be a multicultural or diverse leader or inclusive leader. And there's a lot of literature, there's a lot of things that we can provide to people if they get on that quest. But I think we don't do that. I just think we take it for granted that if If I'm the president or something, that makes me a leader. I could be a president sitting in office. And at least when I was in school, I don't know if you have that problem in UNO, but we used to have a lot of leaders who were sitting. They just, they were the one that got elected to the position and they just sat there. They were just happy to be there. And I'm saying that this is about leadership. Leadership is a process, not a position. That's my sense. So I think getting past the taken for granted boxes, when I start interrogating the boxes, I think I have to interrogate them all, and that's going to open up some doors that I maybe haven't. Because I realized that my race box was actually connected to my gender box. I didn't catch that at first. It took a little while, but the more I interrogated my race box, the more I ended over in the gender box. And the more I went in the gender box, then I wandered over into the sexuality box, and I hadn't planned on going in there at all. That was one of my hardest boxes. That was the box I moved all the way. I kept moving it to the end of the line, and eventually I ran out, and there was no other box except that one. I had to go in that one. But my point is, I think if you start the interrogation process and you recognize it is a process, it's not going to be done today. The matrix that I showed you a minute ago, it wasn't built in a day. This is hundreds of years of education, of media, of reinforcement from social settings and all of this stuff. And so we're just trying to walk that back, and it's a process. So I think letting leaders know that this is a process, and that if you don't get to box number 4 today, that's fine. We just want to see you get started. And I think if they truly start, if they truly make that much commitment, then eventually they're going to get to some boxes that maybe when they started, they didn't necessarily say work on.
I kind of get it, because every time when I was younger, they tried to put me in boxes, and I never fit the box that they put me in. Race, I'm not really black, a mixture of different cultures. So I'm like, why gotta be black? I'm brown. And they're like, no, you black. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's, you have to fit inside the box, because otherwise I can't explain you, right? I can't explain you without the box, because the box tells me who you are and what you are. And really, you have to tell me that.
and when you go around with a big old afro or cornrows, the cops stop you first before they, you be with a cousin that usually sell drugs. They talk to you before they talk to him, and he got a shortcut.
Oh, yeah. I mean, no, there's a lot of signaling. That's signaling. There are a lot of symbols. There are certain things I can wear that reinforces the box, right? And so then you start changing your clothes because, oh man, I can't, like apparently now I can't wear a hoodie. Y'all don't understand. That's a personal crisis. I am the hoodie magnate. I mean, I got a whole closet. It's like hoodie 1, hoodie 2. They got names. That's hoodie 499. We go way back. So I'm like, no hoodies? I can't wear hoodies without potentially invoking somebody's box and I might get killed. I'm like, dang, I'm gonna be naked. What am I supposed to do? I'm from the hood. We wear hoodies like it ain't no thing. And then, the point I'm making is that I have to make, other people can go to their closet and just put on, here's what I want to wear today. No, I got to be like, oh man, wait a minute, hold up. I'm going there. So I might have to change what I want to wear because I might signal somebody's box. I remember I was in class one time, they said, you don't look like a professor. Okay, that means there's some way a professor's supposed to look like. See, somebody got a box. Now, I can't totally ignore that. I got to figure out, okay, well, what does a professor look like? They said suit and tie. See, I'm the anti-suit and tie guy. I don't, only when I have to. I'm just not your suit and tie guy. I mean, I know people look good. I'm just not that guy. And so what's amazing was the entire educational environment was affected by that box stuff. The way they were going to relate to me as an instructor and all of that. I'm like, wait a minute, can I be smart? So does that mean that if you see a young man at the corner with a liquor bottle, he or she can't teach you anything just because they're not wearing a suit and tie? See, I don't live in that world, but I do recognize that there are many who do. And that's why I do what I do. So at first I tried to wear the suit and tie, and ties strangle me. That's what they do. But guess what? I had to work on trying to fit into yours. You're gonna have to work trying to get out of yours. Right? So I would respond by saying, be you. Because ultimately by being you, you'll be happy, and eventually people who care about you, who really want to embrace you, and hopefully we're going to generate those kind of people, they will ultimately accept you for who you say you are and who you want to be. I think you were asking me about the decision, like making sure decisions are inclusive. I never make a decision by myself. I think we have this notion of leadership. I think we had a president who said something like, I'm the decider. I'm really scared of a president of an entire country that makes a decision all by himself. I don't like that idea. And I think the same thing happened for, I mean, when I'm getting ready to make a decision in an organizational context, I might have the authority to make the decision all by myself. I don't have to ask anybody. I am going to. I'm going to talk to the executive board. I'm going to talk to, multicultural student communities that might be affected. I'm going to talk just in this very setting right here, just to be here today, there were a lot of conversations that went on with a lot of different people from a lot of I just operate that way. So I think the way you make sure your decision is inclusive is the process leading to your decision was inclusive. And I think sometimes the reason we end up with the decision that's not inclusive is because we didn't bring anybody into that process. I had the authority all by myself, so I made the decision all by myself. And then that's where you're gonna be when you make the decision. If it hurts somebody or something, you're gonna be all by yourself. So I'm like, I believe in group responsibility. Okay, what do we, because see, it's a different model. I'm a leader to represent you. I'm not a leader to represent me. We gotta change that whole, so since I'm a leader to represent you, it's very important to see if I'm actually representing you. I happen to be a department head. Literally every couple of days, I'm talking to faculty. Are we heading in the right direction? This is what you need to see. Are you getting the resources you need? Blah, blah, blah. Now, sure, I don't have to do that. There's nothing in my job description. I could just sit in the office. I'm the chair. It's going to be a nightmarish experience for them, for me, and it's going to have disastrous consequences that will go. I don't do that. So again, part of what makes it difficult for us to deal with these issues is we have a very twisted notion of leadership. In other cultures, leaders are seen as representatives of who they lead. In this culture, leaders are seen as these autonomous individuals that run stuff. We got to change that thinking process. If you're the head, I don't care if you're the head of the debate team, you're the president of the debate team, you are the coordinator, the manager on behalf of the other debaters. And so their interests, their concern, and their needs need to be part of your whole decision making. So I think it's bringing people, like if I think I'm not being sensitive in terms of gender, if I've heard that, or there's some suspicion or it's been brought to my attention, then I want to make sure that before I make the next big decision or have the next big event or whatever, that I go out of my way to bring in people who are aware of gender issues and say, hey, is this going in the right direction? Do you think this is inclusive? Do you think it's not? And be prepared to have what you plan changed.
That's right.
Sometimes we get that attitude, well, thank you for your suggestion, but here's what I'm gonna do. Right? I mean, you have some leaders like that. Yeah, I really appreciate your input. And we just want to check mark. Got input from women.
Yeah.
Now, what we men have decided is, and I mean, so you got to say that kind of leadership is not acceptable. It never really was, but it's definitely not acceptable in the new society. Being a leader means also, in fact, if you know parliamentary procedure, you know if you're the leader, you're not allowed to speak. You have to relinquish the floor to speak. The reason for that is the leader shouldn't use the leadership to dictate the agenda. And so the idea is that I'm just a player. I'm an important player. I have a special role as the leader, but I'm really part of a team. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's team-based leadership. Multicultural leadership, diverse leadership is, by definition, team leadership, not individual. And I realize that's a cultural challenge. But you can see, I actually believe our problems in this area are not as much problems in this area as they are problems in leadership. I think we have platonic leadership models to begin with. And so when you try to put culture, race, class, or whatever in something that's already set up as subjects and objects, the subject is the leader, the objects is the membership, right? If you start with that, then trying to get sensitive to all this other stuff we've been talking about is a real challenge. So I challenge leaders at the very beginning, do you see yourself as first among equals or above others? Because if you're in that second category, we got work to do before I can talk to you about any of this.
Right.
You're not ready. You need to pre-test.
Right.
You haven't passed the intro. You haven't done the prereqs. So I can't get you into this. This is for people that already understand that I represent other human beings. And I need to be sensitive and inclusive to their needs. Because if you're already sensitive to that, then it's easier for me to go on. The second part of your question was networking. I think sometimes it's doing what we do in friendship. Let's say you got a good friend, and you got another good friend. Aren't you usually the one that puts them together?
Yeah.
You do that automatically, don't you? Bob, meet my friend Jim. I mean, you want them to meet, and you want them to like each other because you're friends with both of them, and you want to hang with both, and so you're doing that introduction. What's funny is when we get to leadership and organization, we don't do that. We just kind of go, Bob, you should meet Jim. Well, if Bob and Jim don't run in the same circles, they have very different organizations, different schedules. There's no logical reason they're gonna bump into. If I'm gonna be the agent of change, I gotta let's go to lunch.
Yeah.
Me, Bob, Jim, we going to lunch. And while we're at lunch, we're gonna, in addition to meeting each other, we're gonna talk about how we potentially could get some things together in terms of programming or events or whatever it is. I mean, you bring people together. We know how to do this. We just, for some reason, don't do it when we get to, multicultural versus we don't do that. But we do this every day. We introduce friends, we connect people together. Friends of mine, some of them are like, I guess dating agents or something. They actually try to hook up people that they think would fit together. I mean, my point is, how come we don't do that at the organizational level? Right? It's the same idea. It's not, I don't want you to think it's like reinventing the wheel. We know how to do this as human beings. We are social beings. If we do the human thing, right? It could be a dance, do the human thing. As opposed to doing the Plato. Right? Doing the Plato is like this. Stay away from me. Stay away from me. But seriously, they did a study and they put two Italian people together and they kissed each other. Like never knew each other. They just greeted. And they did every culture. Got to the US, these two men did the wallflower dance. Because the important thing, don't touch me. Don't get too close. And we do that culturally.
I don't think it is only limited to US. I think it happens in most part of the country. Most parts of the world.
It may be. It may be. In that particular test, though, it was glaringly obvious that people in other cultures, the ones they had there, were much more, like they measured personal space, like how far the two people were apart. Even when they didn't touch, the two people from other cultures, they got pretty physically close together. No. It was obvious. You could have put a yardstick between the two. If they had stepped another half a foot from each other, you wouldn't even know they were in the same activity. And I think we do that. I asked my students one time, I said, you're sitting in a room at the end of the semester. We've been sitting in a room all semester. I had 125 students in my class, sitting in a very tight, enclosed space. I said, you've been sitting right beside 125 human beings for 3 months having the same experience. How many of you met somebody that you never knew in this class? 2 people put up their hands. That's a cultural thing. That's not a personal thing. It's not that 123 individuals missed the boat. Is that culturally, this is my class. It's my this is it. This is my personal space. I'm sitting here, and even though there's human beings all around that I could get to know, I used to love to go to class to meet people. That was my whole thing. And I don't mean relationship, but I mean get to know, oh, that's different. I'm sure this person knows a different language. I'm sure this person knows I was a collector. Maybe I was just a sociologist by birth or something, I don't know. But I was not gonna sit in a room with 200 strangers all semester. We might be strangers day one, but by the end of the semester, everybody in the room knew Imani. They didn't know nobody else, they knew me. They didn't have to like me, but they were gonna know me. It wasn't like, because I don't like being around strangers. Like for example, I've already violated one of my rules because I knew we were running a little bit late, but I normally would have everybody introduce themselves because I really have this thing, and I make all my students do it. I don't like being in rooms full of strangers, so we can't be strangers. When you go to my family reunion, all of y'all, if y'all showed up, y'all would all be cousins. You somebody's cousin. It would be really specific. This Fred's cousin. You don't know Fred from nobody else, but see, but the fact that you would be a cousin is important because they want, you got to be in, you got to be included. We can't have a stranger walking around, so you're gonna have to be somebody's cousin. And they would swear, I mean, you would be officially the cousin with all the rights and privileges and obligations. So that means when you became the cousin now, that means that when auntie, who you ain't related to, says go get that pot off the stove, it's time to go get that pot off the stove. Right? So it's not just that you're included for the benefits, you're also included for the responsibility. But you are included. You're no longer a stranger. And if you come the second time, nobody's even gonna treat you like a stranger. And that sometimes can be a little disconcerting because they're gonna hand you a list of responsibilities. You know, go on get this, that, and other. You're like, I ain't even in this family. It don't make no difference. Now you is. Right? And so that's what I mean. And we have to do that culturally, you know, outside of, you know, family reunion. But if we kind of follow that model. I really want to, because why would you want to be a leader? It just seems to me leaders are motivated by some desire to want to do something for other people. Now you do have ego. You have to avoid confusing ego, right? Ego is me wanting to be seen and be really important and, you know, tell you who my titles. I mean, I could have easily came in here. My name is Reverend Dr. blah, 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 and shows you my vita and whatever. Notice how that would set up the interaction. Would you really want to stay after that? If I started that way? I mean, you might stay because you have to, but that would literally, you would tell yourself, man, this arrogant, so and so and so, I guess I got to stay. And there are people that do that. That signals that ego is driving it. But when I became a leader, I was not interested in being famous or making lots of money. I was interested in trying, I thought I had some skills where I could help people. And I'm like, and I noticed that people would kind of gravitate towards me. They would kind of follow. So I'm like, well, if they're going to follow anyway, I need to be saying and doing something that's worthwhile. And that was my motivation. That was my call. I think there is a call. And I was called to leadership for that purpose. And so I think we need some calls, and we need to educate leaders about the difference between a call and the just showing up. Right? I mean, it's a difference when you call somebody on the phone, you say come, or they just show up at the door.
Yeah.
Right? You may accept them, but you kind of like, could have called before you came over. I mean, you know, I could have, cleaned up a little bit if you had told me to come. Right? The way you get over it is to begin to scale some heights. Now that doesn't mean you go to Everest. See, I think sometimes the reason that we can't overcome our fear is because we choose Everest as the first. Right. We're going to start with Everest. Okay, see, that's not going to help me with my fear. Because I'm probably going to just be standing up like, ain't no way. and that's going to be it. And when I walk away from that, I'm not even getting up on a step ladder. It's not, I'm done. So we need to start with the step ladder. Okay, I'm having a problem with heights. Let me get this, can I get right here? Okay, I'm okay. Then maybe come back and get the 2-level step ladder. Okay, we're a little high now. And I'm saying that I think it's one, choosing an objective that is realistic given your fear. But I think you do have to engage the fear. You can't lick the fear without engaging the thing that you fear. Right? I mean, the way that your parents are going to tell you that the boogeyman is in the closet and it's going to get you. When you were a kid, I don't know about all of you, but I had a cousin who was thoroughly convinced the boogeyman was in his closet. It was going to eat him or do something. So see, what we got to do is we're going to have to open that door. That's the only way that boogeyman is ever coming out of that closet, and we're going to be able to stop this. We can't say we're not going to open that door. Look, but now here's the key. Where is mom and dad when we're dealing with the boogeyman at the door? They right there with you, because I'm scared. So look, son, we're gonna open this door. It's gonna be all right now. See, we're not gonna open it all at once. We're just gonna crack it. See, anything happen? Look like it's all right. Let's put our hand in there. You feel anything? No, it looks like I don't see nothing but clothes. I mean, that's the way. And I think that's kind of our approach: is embrace the fear, accept the fear. I understand your fear. I understand the concern. Let's start small. What can we do today? Just nibbling. Let's not eat the whole pie. Let's just take a little slice. Can we meet someone from a different organization today? Can we encounter someone from a different culture today? Can we go somewhere that crosses whatever line we think we can't cross? Can we just do that much today. And then when we get through, acknowledge. And this is something we don't acknowledge people that are doing the right thing.
Yeah.
You ever notice that? We talk all this diversity talk. When you ever heard of the National Diversity Award?
Right.
Or the national, I mean, in a sense, we tend to reward and acknowledge those people. You want to get on the media, be intolerant in one of these areas. And you'll get, they'll do a whole television show on you. You'll be famous, right? People who promote negatives in this culture for some reason get elevated. But the person who actually goes about the business of trying to build, a lot of times that person is unsung. So I think we as agents of change have to recognize those people. So when that person gets up on that little step ladder, you need to act like they've just made an incredible accomplishment. Right? Think about a baby, right? When a baby takes those first steps, they took 2 little tiny steps and completely crashed to the ground. Didn't nothing really happen, right? But as a parent, how do you act? Oh, that was that was just the greatest. That was Bruce Jenner winning the Olympic gold right there. Okay? But that's so that that encourages them, because they're like, oh, that was something good. That was okay, now I can get up, I'm gonna try it again. And next time they may get halfway across the room before they crumble and fall. But you keep, and I think we have to do that because the baby too is afraid. They're not used to walking by themselves. This is a scary, terrifying thing. Wow, I got to go all the way to the couch, and it's only this far, but that's the Grand Canyon, right? For some of us, that's the way diversity is. That's this little distance right here. We have to be careful because see, for us, that's no distance at all.
Yeah.
And so sometimes we get an attitude with the learner. You ever got the attitude with the learner? Now come on, you could have walked over there. You got me sitting here all this time and you didn't walk over to the table right here. Watch, see, table. Come on. I mean, but they're not there. They're not there. They're gonna need, today may be this far. And tomorrow, they might touch it and back up. I mean, this is the process. And if you're honest with yourself, this is where humility comes in. We went through it too.
That's right.
You may not admit it. Sometimes your best way of being a good facilitator is recognizing your own weakness. See, sometimes that's a box we hide from ourselves. The box we hide is that we had to take them little bitty steps. See, I know when it came to gender and class and a whole bunch of stuff, I had to take. I wasn't always, math looks good, right? You see me win the Olympic gold, right? You saw the Olympic athletes and their performance. But behind that, it was backbreaking, life-threatening work, right? I mean, it's not like they just showed up. And it's the same way. Interacting with other human beings when you're in a culture where we learn, if anything, not to do that except at the minimum level, that's a challenge. So it's gonna take work. So, and tell people, I know it's gonna take work, I just want you to get started, and here's the most important thing. I'm gonna be there with you. I'm not gonna leave you alone. I'm not gonna hand you a manual and say, go do this. Exactly. I'm not gonna come down on you like a ton of bricks if you make a mistake. I'm gonna pick you up, we're gonna dust you off, and we're gonna see how we can go forward.